So our final speaker today is Lars Edgardh from Spacemetric. I see you there, Lars. So why don't you share your screen and I'll tell you when I see it. Here we go. Yeah. Perfect.
That's
Perfect.
me.
Welcome, Lars.
Thank you.
Hope you feel great. Take it away.
That's great. Let's do my presentation. So I'm Lars Edgardh from Spacemetric, and we are a company located in Stockholm, Sweden. We are a software company, and we have been in the business for the last, I think it's almost 24 years now. And just to give you a little bit of story of remote sensing, the first ever image from space was from a V2 rocket in 1946. And you see, it's quite noisy. It's down to the right. The first imaging satellite was in 1960. So ever since, the Earth has been imaged by satellites. And you see, it's a lot of noise. It's a lot of problems with mapping this into Earth. And that's where we are working. We try to make the pixels valuable for others to analyze the data. What you see up to the right is one of the latest satellites, a Pleiades Neo, that gives you a 30 centimeter resolution. That's state of art today. And we know that there is satellites that could give approximately 10 centimeters as well as a resolution. And that means you could see almost anything from space. But you might be disappointed when you only see clouds as well. So that's one of the typical problems. But Spacemetric, our vision is to help our customers to fame and profit from the flood of geospatial imagery. And what we see is a flood of data coming from satellites. And the technology today has been so advanced and has started to generate so much data. So this is a problem by itself. And we do that by having methods for prioritizing of the data so that we can help our customers to get the right data at the right time, but also to give the highest quality of data. And I will talk more about this using photometric techniques. And just to give you an idea of where we are located in the value chain, and to explain that, we have this slide where we have the data acquisition part to the left, and that's basically the satellite and the satellite owners producing data. And this data can be quite raw sometimes and problematic. There's a lot of problems with it. And that's taken care of in the image supply step, and that's where we come in. We try to take the raw data from the sensor and produce data that can be analyzed in a good way. And you saw those early images, and we are basically working with the same problems as there was in 1960. You have a lot of noise, you have a lot of geometric problems. The difference is more data, it's more bands. You have more spectral bands, so instead of a black and white image, you have maybe 12 bands or up to 200 bands coming from space. The next step is information retrieval, and that's where you have Pandion and Orbify. So we try to support them with good data. And doing that, we have 3 products. We have Keystone, that's when you want to do your processing in your own data center. It can be in a server room somewhere or in a container. We have Cloudstone, and that's more or less a different business model where we try to benefit from deploying everything in the cloud. And that means we can scale the processing from very small to very big. And then the latest development is to miniaturize everything and move it up into space. So Keystone and Cloudstone, that's done on the ground. But Bluestone, that's where we move the software up to the satellite itself. We try to support analysis already close to the sensor. And that means we can cut time. We don't need to send all the data down to ground. We can benefit in terms of costs for the satellite owner. And we have seen from some calculations and examples that the ground segment can be even more costly than the satellite itself. and that is the communication part is extremely costly when it comes to satellites. And that is what we're trying to meet with Bluestone. Just a few examples of where we have deployed the software and our technology. Sari Satellite Technology is one of the largest satellite builders nowadays in Europe. They started as a small company. We worked with them ever since 2004. We have been supporting them for at least 15 missions. I think it's even more today, where we have helped them to get a value out of every pixel. And this was a company introduced on the market selling inexpensive satellites using COTS approach. That means taking technology from the shelf, building satellites, put them in space. And there was a lot of how to say it, not so costly technologies used, and that impacts on the image quality as well. But we could handle that on the ground. We are also working with military systems. We developed a system for the Swedish jet fighter JAS Gripen. They have a reconnaissance pod, and we got a task to supply the Swedish Air Force with a reconnaissance system deployed in containers on the ground. And this was even brought into UAVs, where we were introduced to use video data in the same kind of system. And here time is essential. And data management is essential, because this kind of sensor systems, they produce enormous amounts of data. And for an analyst to be in a hot zone, you need to have a very, very speedy process to find the right data and to organize it and be able to analyze. NV Orto is another product and another type of business where we license out our software into a US-based company, L3 Harris. It's nowadays NV5. They use NV Orto as a part of the NV software suite, and that's one of the largest analysis tools on the market. It's a desktop solution, and they can use it for working with almost any kind of satellite images, or rectify data, generate 3D from it. And that's our software behind the scene. We've even had a customer that wanted to test our Keystone system, and they selected this Envy product to compare. And they said, yes, you are even better than Envy. But luckily, we discovered that they were using an older version of our licensed software, and we had to tell them that it's the same software. We are also working a lot in the real-time domain. I mentioned that for the military systems, but we're also doing that on civilian satellites together with KSAT. And KSAT is the second largest spaceport operator located in Norway. The biggest one is Swedish Space Corporation in Sweden. So they have a concept, EOPort, where we have supplied software, so we can, within seconds, minutes, disseminate and make data available from radar satellites, optical satellites as well, using their ground station network. I've been talking to and from about miniaturization, and I think this is one of the most important part we are heading for right now. And many years ago when we started, the systems were quite big. It was large service systems. The military systems we deployed in containers containing servers and workplaces. Some years ago, we had miniaturized into what we called Konken size. Konken, that's the famous Swedish ryggsäck. That you can keep a 17-inch laptop in, and that worked quite well for the kind of software we have. Today, we're working on IoT systems using edge computers. For example, this one you see on the picture. The size is in satellite terms 1U, and that's 10 by 10 by 10 centimeters. If you compare that to a container, that's, if you use the same measure, it would be 65,000 U's. You can see the kind of speed on miniaturization. And we can do basically the same thing in the servers on the ground as well, up in space. We're even proven it in space today. So the way forward for us, that is to work in a sensor agnostic way. That means we take in almost any kind of sensor. We learn every sensor in the details. We work on the metadata. We know how to produce really high quality images from them. And that means we can support sensor fusion as well. That means we can take data from different types of optical satellites, even radar satellites, and fuse them together to give a kind of unified picture. We work in the real-time domain, and that means we can produce data from very large data sets within seconds. Networking is another important issue, and that is to stream data to users wherever they are. And there are very specific technologies to support and enable this. And the last but not least, move things out to space or close to the sensor. That's where the processing will be in the future. Thank you. I think I stopped there.
Thank you so much, Lars. Very, very intriguing and interesting. I have a question for you from somewhere in the beginning, I think. Is laser communication an option to edge computing?
I think it's complementary. Edge computing is producing a lot of data, and if you have lasers, especially if you can do it between satellites, and then we are talking about networking as well, I think that could be really, really interesting. There's a lot of tests nowadays doing laser beaming down to ground station, but I think that will take some time to get it working, and especially given the fact that some of the ground stations are covered by cloud most of the time.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. We've been working with edge computing for quite a while. I think for some reasons we got early on quite good at that here in Stockholm. Actually, we have a couple of very good companies in this domain. So now when you're putting your algorithms and things in on the on the satellites, how do you deal with the software upgrades and all of that? Because it's hard to service the computers and stuff up there. So I guess you have to do anything remotely and while it's up and running.
Yes, we thought that would be a problem, but nowadays satellites are connected. They are part of a larger network, and there is a really good ways to make trusted updates and make sure the systems are running.
Okay. Good. Yeah, I know it works. I was just curious about it. Like you said, there are no USB sticks to provide or anything like that. You have another question here? Yes, complementary and expensive today will never be an option to edge. Well, that was a view of the laser communication alternative, I think. And I think the response was similar to yours, Lars. I don't have any more questions, and I don't think any other questions from the audience. So thank you so much, and have a good rest of the day, and see you soon. So with that, we've done the program, and we are out in good time. I just want to we spent a year now in this domain, and every week we find new amazing companies. It was actually so that among the 50 or so tech companies we had as members at things before we went to space, we discovered that at least a handful of them actually already were in the space without really talking about it, which I found quite interesting. And actually Unibap is an old member of ours, so it's one of the quite advanced Swedish companies. I'm still thrilled of the fact that it's so difficult to get people to, let's say, understand the value of the data that's coming from Earth, how accessible it is becoming, how rapid it's become, affordable, and I can see this incredible opportunity, for instance, in competition with your competitors. You can probably do some processes or some solutions and products or ways of working 10 times better just because you access this data. So I don't expect any answers. You might provide let me know if you want to say something about that. But I think we all have to try to figure out ways to make that happen, and things will at least continue like that. And this is a little bit of an attempt to start with that. But I think that's a new kind of revolution we have in front of ourselves. So does any of the speakers or anyone have any other comments or views on that? Any from the audience? Feel free to speak up. Any good tricks? I think, without knowing, that this is similar around at least Europe, because that's where we have most of our experience. I think it's kind of similar, but I think it's even more difficult in Sweden than in many other places. So I don't know how to crack that. I will think about that over the Christmas break and come back with some hopefully nice ideas afterwards. Okay, guys, thank you so much for today. We have recorded the whole thing. You will find all this presentation. We'll link to you in a post-event mail that we send out. You will also get all the details to the speakers, so you can contact them, and I really urge you to do that. And since this is our last digital event for the year, I wish you a good end of the year and a fantastic next year. After some good breaks with family and friends. So thank you so much, and have a good rest of the day.